Hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law. And for today, we are going to discuss what might be the first criminal trial ever that occurred by Zoom. And this occurred in my county, Travis County in Texas. It was for a relatively low level misdemeanor, speeding through a work zone, but it's the first criminal trial, apparently, that's ever been conducted by Zoom. So we're going to read this article and discuss some of the issues that are related to it. Let's get started with this. The proceeding that appears to be the nation's first virtual criminal trial today was underway for just a couple minutes this week when a moment occurred that would be familiar to many in the pandemic. A juror's Zoom video feed froze. Technical issues. The trial, which was being conducted using video conferencing platform that's become ubiquitous during quarantines and office shutdowns, ground to a halt when juror number 5 paused with one hand aloft as if he were taking an oath. That's good signs. For the next several minutes, the judge and his staff tried to remedy the problem, but ultimately they had to dismiss the man from the 7-member panel that was hearing the case of a driver accused of speeding in a construction work zone. Khalid Kornblau was found guilty of speeding, but not guilty of the work zone enhancement. So our first criminal trial has come with a split verdict. We found you guilty of speeding, but not in the work zone. So that's nice. And if he wants to appeal, we already have one appealable issue. Right? One of the jurors who was sworn in has been dismissed. Now, they have 6, which is what you need for a misdemeanor, because this is a relatively low misdemeanor. So they've got their 6 that they need. So they were able to continue. But at least we have one appealable issue. We dismissed a juror. Is that for cause? I don't even know. Is that for cause in the middle of trial because their input froze? I don't know, but yeah, we got a guilty on the speeding, not guilty on the work zone enhancement. So yeah. The glitch was the only major issue during the online proceedings Tuesday in an Austin misdemeanor court. That's where I live. A groundbreaking experiment as courts across the nation seek ways to restart the most fundamental aspect of the criminal jury system. Jury trials have been largely paused by the corona in many areas, including Texas. Courts across the country have moved some proceedings online, true in a lot of civil cases, but many judges, defense lawyers, and public defenders have been cool to the idea of holding virtual criminal trials because of concerns about whether the process will be fair to the defendant. Yeah, you know, the law field is very traditionally small c conservative. It goes sometimes glacially, and it always goes back. Right, we cite cases from 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. You know, as long as it happened, in the last 1,000 years, basically, we can cite to it. So the law works by building bricks. And so we're very, very concerned about new bricks being laid down. And so everyone's a little bit concerned about this. Now, my biggest concern as a legal commentator is in the secrecy of the jury room. That's my biggest concern. Because in the real world, we can ensure the secrecy of the jury room. We can prevent the room from having any electronic devices in it. We can screen the jurors as they go in to prevent them from bringing anything into the courtroom, including cell phones and the like. And we can make sure there's no bugging devices or listening devices or things like that. So what happens in the jury room stays in the jury room. It's like Vegas, except actually legally true. You know, what happens in Vegas, well, I guess if what happens in a Vegas courtroom or jury room stays in a Vegas jury room would be the operative legal phrase. But yeah, so that's my biggest concern is how do we prevent people from filming it? How do we prevent people from recording it? You know, that raises a lot of problems because jury deliberations are supposed to be secret. And courts are very, 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 very reluctant to try to look into what juries do. So, whatever happens in the jury room, we give them the instructions, we swear an oath, and then we put them in the room, and whatever that happens, happens. And this is the system that we've chosen for better or worse, our jury system. And it's like now someone can record that. If someone does record that, can you use that during an appeal? Can you use the fact that some juror said something at some point in deliberations because now you have a record of it? I mean, it's a legal nightmare. It's a total legal nightmare. Maybe jury rooms should be recorded for all I know, but we've just never done it historically. And so anytime we're changing things, you're like, yeah, that's the part of the problem. How do you ensure that no one is recording that? How do you ensure no one has a tape recorder on their desk and is recording the audio? I don't know. This raises a very serious problem for me. How do you ensure the secrecy of the jury room? in a Zoom world where everyone's sitting at their own desk and someone who's not one of the jurors could also be listening, like a family member, and maybe they're getting IMs from the family member. How do you prevent that? Anyone have any ideas? Because I don't. That's my biggest concern. Officials with Texas courts have come to the conclusion that cramped courthouses will be able to only hold a limited number of jury trials while providing for social distancing if trials resume in schedule. So they have begun options to explore, such as using Zooms. Some courtrooms are bigger than others, so you could definitely get away with it in some courtrooms. You might have to put the jury in the galley, which would be hilarious, but there's some courtrooms you'd be able to do that. You guys are making history just by doing your job, said Justice of the Peace Nicholas Chu during the jurors' selection. The polished wood panels of the courtroom were nowhere in evidence. Instead, the judge, prosecutors, and defense lawyers, defendant, and juror were titled in their video feeds across computer screens, arrayed like the opening credits in the 1970s sitcom The Brady Bunch. I've seen pictures of it. It's kind of hilarious, yeah. Many participated from their home via laptops or iPads, and a cat could be seen frolicking behind one of the jurors. The cat was part of the jury deliberations too. The proceeding was also streamed on YouTube for the public to watch, which I'm assuming they didn't stream the jury part, because that would be like just a big ass constitutional no-no. I'm assuming they streamed everything but jury deliberations. If they streamed jury deliberations, that would truly be a first, like ever, because no, the jury is not open to the public. So I'm assuming that didn't happen. But what's the probability someone recorded it with at least 12 people and perhaps a court officer there? What's the probability someone was pressing record? Chu, a judge in Travis County Justice of the Peace Court, said in the interview a traffic ticket was a natural place to test drive a criminal trial because the stakes are low and many jurors are already familiar with traffic court. The defendant was facing only a fine and court costs, not jail time. Fair enough. If we're going to do this thing, let's try it somewhere where it's really, really, really low stakes first. So if we screw it up, it's not that big a deal. Probably don't want to be starting with a murder trial right away. Chu sought the approval of the prosecutors, defense lawyers, and defendant before embarking. There were also dry runs in a trial-like setting, so they did some moot courts. So they got everyone's permission and consent to do this. The court bought 20 iPads to lend to any juror who did not have internet access or a smartphone. It ultimately distributed them to 4 of the 30 jurors. So they thought about that to make sure that they have technology. So we don't want to exclude people because they don't have the means to record themselves. So we'll lend them an iPad if they need it. So that, okay, that solves that problem. But they still need Wi-Fi, and there's no libraries, so I don't know what they do in that, unless these are the kind of iPads that have cell signal built in, so I don't know about that. The proceedings followed a typical jury format with jury selection, opening statements, testimony, closing statements, and deliberations, but court had to re-engineer the basic aspects using technology. Private virtual breakout rooms in Zoom allowed the defendant to confer with attorneys and the jury to deliberate. So if the defendant wants to talk to his lawyer, they can do it in a breakout room, and the jury can talk in a breakout room. Prosecutors and defense attorneys posted evidence using file sharing service Box before it was displayed on the juror's screen. Despite the planning, there were some speed bumps. 5 potential jurors had to be dismissed for technical issues. Audio feeds occasionally froze. Exactly what you would kind of expect to happen. The trial began with Chu admonishing the jury pool to turn off their cell phones and TVs, ignore social media, and find a place where they could be alone. What do you think the probability is that all the jurors actually followed the advice to turn off their cell phones and TV? How many of the jurors do you think actually did that? Do you think all of them did it? He told potential jurors they had to remain on screen at all times. Still, he had to chastise a prospective juror at one point for looking at another screen. Chu said in an interview his biggest concern with virtual trials is jurors might be distracted by email, children, or something else in their homes. That is also a problem. The jury might be distracted by looking at other things, because maybe a speeding violation is not the most exciting thing that's ever happened. And maybe they might be trying to do work or other things other than jury duty. My biggest concern, once again, remains with the sanctity of the jury room, which, whether or not you think it should be sanctified, is sanctified. And if we're going to change that, we should be doing it deliberately, not accidentally. And so my biggest concern is how in the hell do we ensure the secrecy of a jury room? Now, again, probably not that big a deal when we're talking about a traffic violation, but the principle is still a big issue. The facts of the case were straightforward. You don't say. In a speeding case, it's pretty simple, right? I mean, cop/camera/device finds speeding. You provide the testimony. Someone rebuts. It's, not that big a deal. A prosecutor said in an opening statement that Travis County Sheriff's deputy clocked the defendant going 51 in a 35 in a construction zone. The woman was ticketed for speeding in the construction zone. The defense attorney argued in his opening statement that his client was innocent because there were no signs designating the area as a construction zone and workers were not present. Prerequisites for the work zone violation. So I wasn't speeding in a construction zone. There were no workers. It wasn't marked. He also said the deputy got the speed limit wrong, which I suppose is possible too. The jury issued verdicts after deliberating for about 15 minutes. It's a speeding case, not a lot to discuss. The sentence of $50 plus cost will be deferred as long as she does not accrue more traffic violations in the coming months. So it's all deferred anyway. So, no penalty, but it's good for a trial. Few court statements have embraced the technology as readily as Texas. It's nice to know Texas is leading the technological edge, I guess. Since March, the state's courts have been handling nearly all proceedings online, logging more than 700,000 hours of virtual sentencing, motion hearings, and more. So we've been doing lots of stuff in a criminal context, not just the trials. 700,000 hours of proceedings, man. Judges have become more efficient in clearing cases since some have to travel hours to preside over trials, and more defendants are showing up for hearings because of the ease of logging on. We've seen tremendous benefits. Yeah, okay. Well, for processing motions and stuff, that's all fine. For actual criminal trials, I don't know. I'm glad it went relatively well, but I have my doubts. So that is the end of our discussion of this article, which was entitled Justice by Zoom, Frozen Video and a Cat, and finally a verdict. So this is apparently a first that's ever happened anywhere, a virtual criminal trial, and it was right outside my back door in Travis County, Texas, Austin, where I live. So nice to know we're leading the pack. I have my doubts about expanding this, but if we're going to do this, at least we're working out the bugs somewhere where it's relatively low impact. So I guess that's good. But in any case, that's the end of the discussion of this case. Thank you so much for being part of the Uncivil Law family. If you liked this latest video, please give it a like below and hit the join button. For 99 cents a month, you too can give a recurring membership that helps this channel grow and helps YouTube to recommend this channel to others. We really appreciate your continued financial support and all your love. And until later, my friends, cheers and goodbye.